going to bring on the star of the evening, Nancy Ma. Come on on. Hello, Nancy.
Hi.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for sharing your story and your talents with us. It was really beautiful.
But thanks for asking me to be part of this.
So I first saw your show a couple years ago down at LATC in a small theater with projectors and sound effects. And then you did a reading of it for us at the Morgan-Wixson on Zoom last year with just the camera from your computer. And I'm wondering how this hybrid experience of filming it is different than the other versions you've done so far. What was this experience like?
I wish I had prep for these questions.
We can come back to it if you want.
I think it's weird, I mean, I'm really grateful for the medium to share the story, especially in a time during a pandemic when theaters are closed. But that's the magic of theater. It happens in the moment and it disappears. And there's an audience that vibes, and that's the beauty of the run that was the LATC. Each night was different and each vibe was different. So then this version, it's we're gonna do it one time on stage as if you are doing a play, but there's no audience, but there are cameras. So I definitely had the mental stuff of whatever that was to capture the right story for these cameras, for this audience here, definitely was in my mind. But that was in my mind.
I thought it worked really well, and for this type of production, and now I just want to see it filmed as a movie with all sorts of actors. It's really a beautiful story. I'm wondering what made you want to write and perform this story. What was the thinking behind it?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to write this at first. I never wanted, I feel like this is such a cliche answer now, all solo artists say, I never want to do a solo show. And then here we are, performing the solo show. But I think part of it was, the lack of stories that I really resonated with in terms of where I come from, my ancestors, my Chinatown, New York City. I think that lack and that gap there kind of was an impetus to create stories like that. I think that was why my first coach told me to create work, because the things that I want to tell are not out there yet. So I bet that.
Were you sharing this story with someone and someone said, oh, you should write this? Or you just thought, oh, I have a lot of amazing characters in my life, I should write this?
Well, I had a friend who thought I was really funny and thought I should do stand-up. And so that was why I started writing. He was like, oh, just do some bits. So I started writing bits, and the bits became these characters, and then became, oh wait, oh yeah, there could be a story here. So it kind of was a long process of putting all the pieces together to create this one big piece.
How has the piece changed, or the writing changed each time you've done it, or has it changed at all?
Yeah, I think because the narrator is me, Nancy, as I grow, hopefully I've grown, or as I've changed, and the show changes. Even from the time I performed at LATC, there are certain narrations or characters that I realized, oh, that wasn't what it was really about, or that doesn't resonate as much anymore. So I had to kind of go back and comb through what resonated still, and what the story under the story really is. And Jeff, my director, is always pushing me to find the deeper thing. So I feel like it has changed as I've grown, and as I just kind of understand these people more as well. Yeah.
I understand that recording this was quite emotional for you. And I was wondering if you're able to share why, and if that's uncomfortable, just let me know.
This is all uncomfortable, so I'm already in that territory.
That's what makes you such a great actress, because you're vulnerable and emotional and on the page. I mean, you're great.
Thank you, Michael. It was a really hard day. So I just like can't thank the people who were there. Mariah and Dean and Bill and Jeff and Nico. Like, I think I just felt a lot of pressure to like honor this month because it's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and like honor my family and honor my culture and like make sure that like we were seen, because for so long we are not seen. So I put on a lot of that like unnecessary pressure onto myself as I was performing this, and I'm sure like with everyone, the amount of grief and like trauma and the pain and the anger that's in our bodies because of this past year, and like for many bodies, like for a long time, it just was in my body and in that space, and it chose to like come out on that day of filming. So yeah, I am just so grateful for everyone who's there, who was so patient with me as I had my meltdowns and said all my artist things about, you know, how I suck. I'm sure artists are here probably resonate with that. So yeah, it was a hard day, but I guess here we are. I made it. I made it through that day.
You mentioned about this month and the last year of hatred and behavior across the country to various races, and it just brought to mind this morning. I was walking on the street in Santa Monica, going someplace, and this little old Asian lady was coming, and she had the loveliest dress and a matching mask, and it was so pretty. And as I passed her, I said, "That's a beautiful mask." And she kind of ducked and bowed her head and said, "Thank you," and went around me. And I was so hurt and touched and upset that she would have to feel that way. It has nothing to do with your show, but it just brought it up when you said that. I just don't understand why people, your show, you could have been any race of immigrant. The stories are so similar. And so why we all can't get along. But I digress. Let's ask a couple other questions. I want to know, has Michael seen this show? Not me, Michael, you're Michael.
His name is not Michael, and he has not seen the show.
Okay. I figured names were changed, but has your family seen the show, and what do they think?
My family saw an earlier version of it, and my parents, they don't speak English, so they probably didn't understand most of the show except for like the cussing that I do in their dialect.
Did they recognize themselves though, or?
Like, we've never really talked about it. They're not the most communicative. But I get, you know, like the time when I performed it, I was really upset that they didn't have more to say. And now, you know, a few years later, like I get it, because they are doing the best they can. And part of that is not really talking about stuff like this. And yeah.
Many of us have parents like that. What is your relationship with your family like today? Has it changed since you wrote the piece?
I think a big thing that I learned doing this piece is I'm not necessarily the hero of the story, because I used to think like, I'm the best and everyone wronged me. But I just have a lot more grace for who they are, as I have more grace for who I am, who I was. And I think like one thing the pandemic did do was I really never called my parents. And, you know, I did end up calling a lot more. I even spent time with them during the pandemic. So, which now I realize like we are better apart distance wise, you know?
Right.
And it's a big thing to like realize and know that boundaries create the love in my family.
When you did the reading for our coffee table readings, you were in New York and they were in the other room when you were doing it. Yeah.
Yes, they were. They were flushing the toilet and doing stuff right behind me.
How does being the child of immigrants affect your life today?
Yeah. I mean, I think it probably depends. Like, I can only speak about my parents and like their generation of immigrants. I mean, they are like specifically Chinese who came from the southern part of China, who came with very little and know very much about survival. And so when I look at myself as an artist now, like I think about like how I have made it because I'm no longer in that survival mentality. Like they have gifted me that I don't have to just survive. But I love being a child of immigrants because that is where I come from, and I'll never forget that. Like I will never forget where I'm from and the people that made me. And so that definitely helps me stay grounded. And yeah, like I want to, like, it's so cliche probably too. Like I want to give back to these folks that like made me who I am, and these communities, and that will always be part of me, at least now. Yeah.
Have you found home yet?
I think that's ever evolving. It's funny, even with home, as I think about all the violence that's going on right now in Gaza, it's all because of this definition of home and like who gets to claim home.
Yeah.
And it's so upsetting that some people can't. But I really, I don't know. I don't know.
It's still a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
What projects are you working on now?
Well, I've been working on this project about these two activists that I love, Grace Lee Boggs and Jimmy Boggs, for a long time. Dre, your husband, yeah. Everyone, was part of an earlier reading. So I'm working on that, and then writing stuff. But I don't know. I'm open.
Great. My last question before I bring on some people is, now as an adult, are your apartment walls painted yellow?
I don't have my own. I can't wait to have my own apartment, and then I will paint them yellow.
Just curious.
So I just wear yellow because I don't have the yellow walls yet.
I did want to take a moment to thank Nico Montalibano, Bill Wilday, and Dean Karazinski, who filmed, and Nico spent hours editing, and all the work that went into doing this show. I want to thank them very much. Then I want to thank and bring on the director of tonight's piece, Jeffrey Rivas, and the woman who curated our extraordinary solo stories, Marai Booth Ong. Hi, guys.
Good evening.
Hi.
So, Jeffrey, how did you and Nancy meet, and how did you come to direct this piece?
I had directed a piece called Latina Christmas Special with Diana Yanez, the creator of that of the idea and the inception of that show. And Nancy had worked with her back in New York. And she had reached out to Diane asking for some assistance. And Diane emailed me and says, hey, my friend is doing a one-woman show. Might you want to check it out? So I went and saw Nancy do a version of this in Burbank at a one-act festival. And we chatted after, and I asked her, does she have a director? And she said no. And I said, well, you really don't need one, because her characters were so strong back then. I was enthralled. I was in tears. I was laughing. It was just, I just thought she had so much to give. And I said, I'd be willing to work with you if you allow me. And I said, I also, this is the third show I've directed, and they've all been women of color. And I don't know what that means necessarily, but other than I know I want to help share their stories and get them out. But I always say, if you want a female director, I totally get it, understand it. But we had long conversations where she wanted to go, how I saw it, and there was a lot of pushback and forth. But I think we came to an agreement in terms of how I could support her and help her fulfill her performance and sharing the story and getting it off. And if I could just dovetail into, I think it's hard for all first generation Americans to make that shift, because on one hand, in your home, it's sort of old country, and yet you're being exposed to this totally different world, and how to navigate and how to balance that out has always been interesting. My parents are first generation, first and a half generation, on both sides, and I could see how they navigated, with their parents, and I was able to see that and see how they tried to make it easier for each generation to come in. So, Nancy on her journey, trying to find herself now, dealing with her heritage, when and if she has children, will, make it a little easier for them as they grow up, I believe. So
I think we each want our future generation to be better than we were, and
not have to deal with all the negative aspects of it, being called out because your skin's different, your eyes are different, you speak differently, all those things, that how we try to assimilate. And then sometimes the back end of that is you assimilate so much, then your culture says you're a sellout. So it's a fine balance of how do we hang on to our culturalness and yet become, American.
Well, if the other two shows you've directed or anything like Nancy's, you're probably the George Cukor of today, and work really well with women, because it's really a wonderful show.
It doesn't hurt that she's nice on the ice too. So being in rehearsal, it doesn't hurt.
You brought up the characters. One of the many things I love about your show are the seamless characters. I mean, they just flow one right into the other. I mean, impressionists have, there's a disconnect between, and they just flow beautifully. I'm wondering, what was the process? Well, Jeff, you're saying that it was before you.
I mean, she had the characters down.
What was the process of finding the voices and finding the gestures and finding these characters?
I mean, the characters were pretty solid. What we worked on was really identifying it so that once you saw it the first time, she had a sort of a hook or a tag so that you knew who these characters, once they've been introduced and she revisits them or they come back in her story, they're that recognizable, and you don't have to go, wait, who is that now? Wait, who? That, so I really helped her. I hope I helped her. I think it worked. Really solidify what trait, one singular trait, and then let that expand a little bit more and breathe. So, and I think that has helped her show.
Mariah, when we had you start putting together this solo story series, which for those of you that are new to us tonight, 6 months of solo stories by females. Many of our members were like, we have to get Nancy Ma back because they saw the reading. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the reading we had last year is also when I first saw Nancy's show, and I saw how well it worked on Zoom, because we've seen a lot of Zoom theater this year, and I really thought that just focusing on one person worked great for the medium, first of all. And I also really resonated with Nancy's story. I mean, on one hand, like, yes, we both share a Chinese background and are actors. But other than that, honestly, like, our family life is very different. And yet I've had the same conversations and the same feelings that Nancy has through this piece. And, you know, I just thought we have to, that you can relate to somebody who doesn't share the same story exactly is, I think, what the point of art is. And I think Nancy's story does that so beautifully. And so that's part of your play, Nancy, is what inspired this whole series, really. I wanted to pull diverse voices of women together and say, what else do we have in common? You know?
What's interesting is when you said it touched you is some of the members are Latina, some of them are white, and they each somehow felt like they understood, they knew, and they had similar experiences, even though they aren't from China, or their family's not from China. And so it really is a universal experience. We're all searching for home, you know?
Yeah.
Jeff, when you're wanting to direct something, what are you looking for when you want to direct a new work? A director.
What resonates, you know, what's the common denominator that I think will touch people, and why the story is important to be told. I think, you know, it seems like the common denominator of all the three shows I've directed has been because on one hand, there aren't that many parts for these actresses, and there aren't that many stories. My first actress was Black Jamaican, and it was her, you know, her testimony of growing up in Jamaica without a mother or a father, being raised by her grandmother, actually being, her mother was a product, she was a product of rape, which put her mom into a mental institution, and then her father raped her, and she nearly killed him, but ended up walking her down the aisle for her marriage. And it was her testimonial of how she found grace with the Lord and was able to forgive him. And the Latino Christmas special, again, telling stories from a cultural perspective of how we don't have the Bob Cratchit story. We have different kind of aspects of our, you know, we have tamales, not turkey. We have, you know, the differences, and yet there is a commonality. And the same thing with Nancy. You know, people who come to see the show, like you mentioned, it could be, you could transplant any ethnicity in there and go, that's my story. That is my family. These are what the issues I've gone through. So it's that commonality. It's, you know, I hope that I've been in this business long enough and can have a sense of what people would resonate to. And, you know, knock on wood, I've been successful 3 times so far. So.
Speaking of diversity and these amazing stories, Mariah, what do we have coming up?
So next month, we have Madeline Rochester Kravitz with her story, The Long Goodbye, about her relationship with her mother and how caring for her mother through Alzheimer's healed their fractured relationship. And that's going to be on June 19th. And on July 17th, we wrap up the series with April Wish performing her new show, Mommy Monster, about raising her son who's really small still. He's like 2 or 3, I think, about raising him in a world that is not always kind or gentle, and how to raise a son who is kind and gentle in that world. And her, you know, second child, first son, all those types of issues during the pandemic, written entirely during the pandemic also. So that's an interesting perspective as we start to re-enter the world.
While we don't have all of these shows, the past shows up for streaming, we do have the talkbacks from each of the show on our website. So if you want to check that out, you can check out these amazing women, the talkback with Mariah, myself, and the actress. And Jeff, I wanted to mention that you are a founding member of the Latino Theater Company at LATC. What is the mission of your theater, and what would draw people to come see your shows?
Well, it's twofold. Our company's mission is to explore the expanse of the Mexican-American experience in the United States. That's our immediate goal as a company. But as a producing entity, we want to be a reflection and a mirror of the diversity of the city. So when our programming, not just our shows, but we try to bring in much more diverse shows than you see on some of the other stages in the theater here in LA.
Like Nancy's show,
like Nancy's
which I saw at your theater, and it was amazing.
Luis Avalos Theater, yes.
And the Morgan-Wixson's next community discussion, which is May 27th, Thursday, is focusing on Latinx theater. So if any of you are out there, please join us. Mariah, did you have any other questions for Nancy or Jeff? And does our audience have any questions?
Yeah, if the audience has questions.
No, I don't see any so far.
I'll ask in the meantime. I found it interesting that Nancy and Jeff, like you, I don't know, Jeff is not of Asian descent. And I wondered if that was a reason you chose him to direct your show or not. And how did that work in the piece? How did you guys, because obviously it works, but you know.
I don't think it was intentional in terms of like, oh, he's not Asian, so yes, have him direct it. I think even actually, it might be more the opposite. Like there are times when there are certain nuances. There are a lot of similarities, of course, but also like the nuances of being someone who is Asian American, that how much of it are the specificities that I want to keep, and like the integrity of it, and how much of it is like I need to shift it because it's better for the story, which Jeff can help with. So that's like a constant negotiation of keeping the integrity of the characters, but making it the best story it can be
for a wide audience, which it evidently like is.
Yeah, and I do think, I think back on even the fact that when I speak to my parents in the one woman show, I speak to them in English. That is catered to a white, or actually it's not, it's catered to an audience that doesn't speak my parents' dialect, which is most people. So there is a lot of curation so that a piece like this can be comprehensible. Is that the word? For audiences. Because I didn't want subtitles and I didn't want like to give someone an accent or give my parents an accent, but in Chinese, in English, because that's just not who they are. So yeah.
In my defense, Mariah, I don't know if you know that I worked 9 years with Cold Tofu, which is a predominantly Japanese American improv group out of Little Tokyo. They still exist. They're a much younger crowd now than when we had started back in the 80s. But I was really made aware of a lot of the Asian cultural differences, and there are a lot of similarities between certain ethnicities. But I also want, again, even though she is Asian, I'm sensitive to things that, we had like many discussions of what kind of music, what kind of things did you want to have or not have. And it was a negotiation, and ultimately it's Nancy's story. So I have to honor that. And again, make her shine as bright as she does.
But as we've mentioned as well, I think that Latin immigrants and the Irish immigrants of the 1800s and the German immigrants, like the first generation has to adapt and has to try to assimilate, and it's a journey. And I think that's why everyone can relate to Nancy's story, even if they aren't Chinese or even Asian in general, because it is a relatable story to everyone.
But even with that, I want to be careful. The story is not about assimilation, and I think it's only even in the last year or as I've grown to like, oh wait, I do have a say in how this show is being defined. It's not about assimilation. It's about like a kid growing up who happens to have parents who are Chinese, and you're negotiating family, and so I just wanted to make sure I put that in there.
Gotcha. Wrong word on my part, but
yeah.
The point being that you don't have to be Chinese to relate to your story.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Right.
Which was your favorite? Because your physicality and your characters are so clear and so fun to watch you go in and out of each of them so specifically. Which is your favorite to play?
Great question.
I love playing my sister, Joyce, just because, I mean, she's like my favorite person in the world as well. So it's like fun to kind of poke fun at and make her the simplified character in a play. And I think like people love Uncle Chet because he's just kind of outrageous. It's always fun to play him as well.
Joyce is also my favorite to watch you. I actually had, the other day I was doing a voiceover audition, and for some reason you doing Joyce was the voice in my head. It was amazing. It's very clear.
Did you book the job?
Who knows?
I want to meet Joyce. Like, I'm hoping someday I can meet this woman. She's great.
Yeah, what book is she reading now?
Some amazing book. I don't know. She's definitely
I do want to thank you so much, Nancy. I met you through my husband, and it was a great gift that our paths crossed, because I just admire you and your writing and your talent. And I thank you for sharing it with the Morgan-Wixson. We really enjoyed having you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Jeff, for joining us as well.
Oh, thank you for your support and making these stories available for more people to see.
Be sure to check out the Latino Theater at LATC. I'm sorry?
There's a panelist has a
comment. Here we go.
There's a comment.
A comment, here we go. That was a powerful piece. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you, Eve. It was a powerful piece. So be sure to check out LATC. Check out Nancy on Instagram to see what she's doing next. And be sure to check out our website, morgan-wixson.org, to get information on the Yes show, Now Hear This, that's coming in July, which is very exciting. They're going to be doing it against green screen and then editing it all together. So it's going to look like they're all together, but they're actually socially distanced. You can also get information about our Latinx theater community discussion and find out more about next month's solo stories. If anyone missed this, you can watch the encore performance next weekend. Just have your friends purchase a ticket on our website. And to all of you and to all of our attendees, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Thanks all.